it is possible to be a technical band in metal speak, but also have your sensibilities lying more in creating memorable songs than just trying to bowl people over with your raw musicianship.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hey, how's it going? My name is Alex, and I sing for a band called Undeath. We are a death metal band from Rochester, New York.
And Alex, in terms of death metal, what flavor of death metal would you say is Undeath? Do you feel like you belong to any particular period or any particular region of death metal?
Sure, yeah. I would say that Undeath is very much kind of indebted to the American school of death metal, like the early 90s Florida stuff. Lots of Morbid Angel influence. You know, we take a lot of influence from our upstate New York brethren in Cannibal Corpse. There's some slightly techier influence in there too. You know, we were all fans of bands like Necrophagist. We're all fans of Cryptopsy, Spawn of Possession, stuff like that. But all in all, I would just say riff and hook driven meat and potatoes death metal would be the Undeath ethos, so to speak.
So I'm glad you used the word hook. I'd like to speak to you about the importance of hooks in a little bit. But before we get there, can you tell me a little bit about how Undeath came together and what your goals were at the time that you formed?
Yeah, definitely. Undeath formed in the fall of 2018, right around Thanksgiving. The band started with just Kyle, who's one of our guitarists, Matt, who's our drummer, and Matt also does all of our cover art, and myself. And we were just a three piece with Kyle on guitar, Matt on drums, me on vocals. And that was the band for the first year and a half, pretty much. But the way that we came together was I was in a band prior to Undeath called Bone Mask. And Bone Mask was kind of like sludgy, little Neurosis influence in there, but also kind of some more HM2 death metal style influence in there as well. A little all over the place, but pretty short-lived band that I was in prior to Undeath. And we played a show in Rochester in 2018, opening for Defeated Sanity. And Kyle came to see Defeated Sanity at that show and ended up watching us. And I don't know, I guess he must have been impressed with my performance because he asked me not long after that show if I wanted to come and try out for a death metal band that he was doing with Matt. And I showed up. I was happy to do it. And I guess I got the job because I've been in the band ever since. But yeah, that was the beginning of Undeath.
So you guys started as a three-piece. For those first two demos, did you record those as a three-piece?
Yeah, we did. We recorded both of those in our old practice space in Rochester, just as a three-piece. I honestly don't know if there's bass on the first demo. I don't think there is, but I know there is on the second one, even though you can barely hear it.
When did you guys flesh out the lineup? When did you guys end up getting Jared as the second guitarist and Tommy on bass?
So that happened in 2020, and that came about because we've been trying to add a second guitarist and a bassist for pretty much the whole time the band was active. It wasn't like we were a three-piece because that was some kind of artistic choice. It was just out of necessity, and we wanted to play shows. But yeah, 2020 rolled around, and we had a lot of free time in our hands because of the COVID lockdown. And it was kind of a 1-2 thing, with Tommy first and Jared second. Tommy came about first because I was driving home from a show that we had played in Detroit, and I was just thinking about how badly we needed a bass player. And I was sitting in the drive-thru at some fast food place, and I opened up Facebook on my phone, and the first video that I saw, kind of serendipitously, was Tommy playing an Atheist cover on bass. And it was perfect. And I just reached out right then and there, and I asked him if he wanted to join the band. And that was pretty much that. And then Jared was maybe a month or two after that. He was Kyle's friend from way back, and he was moving back to Rochester. And Kyle just asked him if he wanted to join the band. And, we had the lineup solidified very quickly, not long after that.
Out of curiosity, so this is a funny question, and I'll explain why I asked this. But why did you feel that you guys needed a bass player?
Because every time that we would play a show, somebody would tell us that we needed one.
Okay.
And I remember specifically, we played a show in Rochester with the bands Fetid and Cerebral Rot, and we played what I thought was a great set. And I remember walking off stage, and the very first person I talked to was the singer of Cerebral Rot. And he said, "Yo, that was killer. Just, you guys need a bass player so bad." And that was kind of the moment for me where I was like, yeah, I got to stop putting this off. We really need to find somebody.
I mean, did you agree with that? Did you agree, at least from a sonic or musical side, that you guys needed a bass to fill out the sound?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, we were never a three-piece because we thought that that's what the band needed to be. We just wanted to play shows. And I think all of us knew that we wanted a bassist and a second guitarist eventually. We just weren't really placing too much urgency on it, I guess. And after enough people told us that we really needed it, then we started kind of stopping to drag our heels and getting it done, you know?
Yeah. So the reason why I asked is it's a little bit of an ongoing joke, but I speak to a lot of people who work as engineers, recording albums, recording, death metal. And the bass is an extremely tricky instrument to record, just because most bands downtune, C or B, and then you've also got constant double kick drumming going on at the same time. So the bass kind of gets lost in the mix. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, to me, and I agree. Like, I think there is something to the bass that fills out the sound, but also it's not something that I think is immediately apparent to listeners. You really have to listen, unless it's Alex Webster. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But you really have to listen for the bass in the mix a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I think for us, a big thing too was we just wanted to wait for the right person to come around. And, we tried out people before Tommy. We tried out some friends. We tried out just some other people that we were acquainted with. And it was just one of those things where, no disrespect intended here whatsoever. But, yes, they could play bass and they could get their way through the songs, but they weren't adding any kind of unique flavor or excitement to the music. And we wanted the bass not to dominate the songs, but we wanted it to be a present factor, and we wanted the bass to have character and identity to it. And I really think Tommy brings all of those things to the table. So I'm glad that we waited for him to kind of come into our lives.
Yeah. Did you say Tommy was playing an Atheist cover?
Yeah, he was. He was playing something off of Unquestionable Presence.
Was that also what you were looking for? Were you looking for somebody who had that kind of tech prog background, who could handle the way you guys play?
Maybe not specifically like a techie or proggy background, but definitely somebody who at least knew their way, at least casually around theory and around, who kind of spoke the language of music, so to speak. Not to sound too pretentious about it, but while Undeath is a pretty straightforward band, and our music is very pop structured, Kyle and Matt and Jared are all pretty well versed in music theory, and they use it all the time consciously in writing. And we just wanted somebody who also could contribute with that, and who was familiar with those ideas and those ways of thinking about things. And because we knew it would make communicating about writing a lot easier, but also because we knew that it would just kind of continue to add more texture and identity to the songs that we were writing. And Tommy is all of those things. So yeah, that was definitely important to us.
Yeah. You mentioned music theory. Do you yourself come from a music education background? Did you study music?
No, I didn't. I'm kind of the outlier in our band. I mean, I come from way more of I love metal. I listen to metal every single day of my life nonstop, but I come from a much more punk and hardcore background in terms of the music that I got into more extreme music through when I was growing up. So music theory was never really something that I interested myself in, but Kyle went to Syracuse for music theory. He played double bass in college. He comes from a pretty professional background, I want to say, or quasi-professional background as far as thinking about music goes. And the other guys are all, cognizant of that stuff as well. But for me, I'm just kind of the vibes guy.
Gotcha. So I'd like to speak about your songwriting a little bit. Does Kyle handle most of the songwriting?
Typically, yes. Him and Matt have been kind of the nexus of the band since the very beginning as far as writing goes. Most of our songs, I'd say at least 80 or 90% of them, start with just Kyle and Matt jamming on ideas. And, Kyle will bring 20, 30, 40% of a song or an entire song pretty much written, and he'll bring that to practice. And him and Matt will just flesh it out. And that was the way that the band operated from a writing standpoint for, up until pretty much the second record, honestly. And then when they had stuff done, they would just bring it to me, and I would just learn the songs and learn the lyrics and and that was that. But ever since its time, our second album, things have kind of opened up collaboratively a little bit more. You know, Kyle's still doing the bulk of the writing, I would say, him and Matt together. But Jared's got a song on the new record. Tommy's got a song on the new record. Tommy had a song on its time as well, but that was kind of like 50% Tommy, 50% the rest of us kind of like picking it apart and restructuring it. But when it comes down to it, yes, I would say that Kyle is the sort of creative center of the band still.
Do Kyle, Tommy, and Jared also demo stuff on their own?
Oh yeah, they do demo stuff by themselves all the time, and they'll send it to the group chat. We'll kind of like compare notes about stuff.
How finished are these demos? Like, are they putting in programmed drums and things like that?
Yeah, I think Tommy is a little bit more of a completionist when it comes to demos. You know, he'll add the MIDI drums and everything in there, and he'll kind of present us with a completed song, like arrangement wise, all in MIDI and stuff. But Kyle and Matt, it's much more like, or Kyle, Matt, and Jared, they're much more like they'll just go to the practice space and have the phone son record and place it in a corner of the room, and then they'll just jam out the song and send that file to the rest of us.
I'd like to go back to what you said about hooks. Let's start with what you mean by hooks. Is the hook always a riff, or can a hook be something else?
It can be any number of things. Riff is definitely the most common form of hook, especially in our music, or specifically in our music. It can be a melody, it can be some vocal phrasing, it can be a chorus altogether. But really, it's just any individual aspect of a song that leaps out at you and is catchy enough to kind of, you know, get its proverbial hooks in you. And, something that you catch yourself kind of thinking about after the song is done and makes you want to listen to the song again. And I think that we place a ton of importance on that in our music. And we're always trying to load our songs with as many hooks as we possibly can, obvious ones and less obvious ones too, so that when you find something about a song that you love, you come back to it, and then maybe you discover a new thing, or you discover a few new things that are equally as hooky and catchy to you that you weren't even aware of the first time because you were so caught up with one other specific thing. So yeah, I think that's a huge aspect of this Undeath songwriting process.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a little bit older, and I remember a time when there's almost like a, not necessarily a battle, but there are people who prefer their music, especially death metal, to be much more technical. And then on the other hand, you had bands like Bolt Thrower and 6 Feet Under or whoever who were, a lot simpler but a lot catchier. Do you know what I mean? And so there's almost this idea that like, once you became, really technical, you're leaving hooks and catchiness behind. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. I think that, it is entirely possible to write music that is demanding and technical and proficient, but also is rooted in kind of a pop song structure and has a verse, chorus, verse feel to it and is catchy and hooky. And I think I'm not just going to toot our own band's horn. I feel like that would be extremely egotistical, but I think Cannibal Corpse is a perfect example of that. I think of a song like Scourge of Iron or, Evisceration Plague or Hammer Smash Face or, just running down the list here. But these are songs that are not easy to play, that are extremely technically challenging, even when it's not immediately obvious that they are. I mean, these are super difficult songs to perform on every instrument that is being played there, but they're direct and they're hook driven and they're catchy. And I know I keep repeating catchy and hooky and all this stuff over and over again, but I'm not aware of too many other words to describe that sensation. So I think it is possible to be a technical band in metal speak, but also have your sensibilities lying more in creating memorable songs than just trying to bowl people over with your raw musicianship. And I think that a lot of metal fans kind of forget that. And I think that it's a shame because there's a lot of great bands out there that are doing just that. But because the focus isn't entirely on, look how good I am at my instrument, they get a little bit overlooked, or maybe they get looked at askance because they're not as in your face with it as they could be.
You mentioned the verse, chorus, verse song structure. What is it about a chorus that you think is important, that a song needs one?
I don't even know if a song needs one, but I think that it just depends on where you're writing from and what you hope people take away from your music. I love plenty of music that doesn't have any kind of tangible chorus in it. But if you're writing from the perspective that you want to create songs that you want people to remember and return to, and you want people to come to your shows if you're a band and have specific songs in mind that they're hoping to hear because there's aspects in them that they keep coming back to that they can't get enough of, then I think having a catchy and memorable chorus is extremely important. And for a band like us, for Undeath, we're not the kind of band that we're trying to create atmospheric soundscapes, and we're not trying to, like I was talking about earlier, just flummox people with our musicianship. We're trying to just write tracks.
Right. Yeah.
We're trying to just create songs that people will listen to and be excited about and want to maybe like start their own band or sit down and try to learn how a riff goes. And I think that if you're trying to accomplish something like that, then spending the time to create a memorable chorus is very important.
Yeah. I think you'll appreciate this because you grew up listening to a lot of punk and hardcore. But this came up on the podcast quite recently where I was talking about the way the chorus song structure came into metal through the blues, and was it kind of grew out of this tradition of spirituals where there's always a part where people would sing together. Do you know what I mean? Like it was a group bonding experience.
Sure.
And I think like choruses are a way, I mean, there are definitely musicians who don't want or don't need to have that kind of audience interaction, but a chorus is powerful. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're Taylor Swift or Iron Maiden. There's that part where when the audience all sings together, it's a group bonding experience, and then it's a way to bring, like, I don't know what the biggest audience you ever played to is, but I'm guessing you've played to a couple thousand people, and got to watch like everyone united in that moment, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it is spiritual, like you said. It has kind of a very powerful spiritual energy to it on both sides of the coin. I can think of two specific examples here from kind of both perspectives of performance. I remember when Undeath played Psycho Las Vegas 2 or 3 years ago. We were lucky enough to be playing the same year as At the Gates. And At the Gates is Kyle and I, that's one of our all-time favorite bands, full stop. And we were doubly lucky because At the Gates was doing Slaughter of the Soul, their album, front to back. And that album was just massively, massively influential and important to the both of us growing up as far as getting us into death metal and extreme metal and stuff like that. So, I remember being up front with Kyle, and, I'm sure alcohol was a factor here as well, but watching At the Gates playing this album, and every chorus that they would hit was just like this righteous wave of ecstasy just washing over me. This album I've listened to my whole life, and getting to scream these words back at these guys with, 4,000 other people who were also moved and impacted by this record growing up. And, I can't really speak too well. I can't overstate the importance of this aspect too. Like the hooks on that record and the choruses are just enormous, and the power that they had in that moment of being able to shout them back at the band with all these people it was so gratifying. And it's just such a moving experience to be able to do that. And that's the kind of power that a good chorus can have in the hands of a good band. And on the other side of that, I remember when we played Download Festival in England, I think that was last summer or maybe 2 summers ago. And that was to like 8,000 people. And that was by far the most people we've ever played in front of. I think it's still the most people we've ever played in front of. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that 8,000 people were screaming every word back at us. That just did not happen. But, looking out of that crowd and playing a song like Rise from the Grave and looking at the first couple rows of people, and there's, 100, 150 people singing the chorus back at me. And I look further past them, and everybody else in the crowd is just kind of going crazy. It's kind of indescribably powerful when something like that happens. You write a chorus in a practice space with your friends, and you think you've got something, and then you take it on the road, and some people like it and some people don't, and you kind of just keep playing it because you believe in it, and then it all kind of culminates in this experience where you play it in front of thousands of people, and the whole first couple of rows are screaming it right back at you. And then you kind of feel like you successfully accomplished what you set out to do in the first place. You created a chorus that, when it hit the right ears, it lodged into those people's brains, and they remembered it, and they wanted to come to the show and shout it back at you. So from a performance standpoint, from an audience member standpoint, I think that in the hands of a capable and good band, a big chorus, like a well-written big chorus, is just it's one of the best tools in the songwriting arsenal there is.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other reason why death metal bands need choruses is you need something to put on the back of a shirt, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So let's talk about More Insane. At the time we're having this conversation, you released your third studio album a month ago through Prosthetic Records.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about how this was a more collaborative experience, how your bass player Tommy and your second guitarist Jared contributed music to this album. What would you say makes this album different from the previous two?
At the end of the day, when it comes down to just like what we were trying to do with the album, musically speaking, I think a lot of it was kind of just business as usual for us. We went into the space and in the writing process, just thinking like, all right, let's write 10 more death metal songs. Like it really kind of was just as simple as that, broadly speaking. But as far as the actual process of recording and arranging the record, that was definitely different. We were really pretty DIY and flying by the seat of our pants when it came to recording everything else up to More Insane. Like I said, we recorded our first two demos in our practice space. We recorded Lesions of a Different Kind, our first album, in Philly in like 3 days. And then It's Time to Rise from the Grave, our second record, we recorded that in Philly as well on a shoestring budget in a little less than 2 weeks. And that was everything, But with More Insane, we had an entire month to record that album. And we branched out and we worked with Mark Lewis on this one, who's a much more established metal producer than we're typically used to working with. And that was an amazing experience working with him. But to put things in perspective on like a timeline kind of way of thinking, with It's Time to Rise from the Grave, we did the drums, or the whole record took a little less than 2 weeks. With More Insane, the drums alone took like 2 weeks, because we were doing, we spent 3 days at the very beginning of the process just getting tones and then dialing everything in. And then we spent 11 days after that just doing like a song a day. And on every other record, it's been like 8 songs one day and then the rest of the songs the next day, So this was a much more detailed and specific and gradual process. And I think that's the big marked difference between this record and the previous ones to me, is just how much more time we spent on everything. But besides that, man, the ethos and the thinking of everything was pretty much the same. We've kind of been very true to ourselves since the very beginning, and I don't think that really changed for this record at all.
So you mentioned Mark Lewis, who's worked with a lot of metal bands and has worked with Cannibal Corpse, among others. What did you want Mark to bring to the sound of the album, or to the sound of Undeath? Or was it just the relaxed environment that you were looking for?
We knew that Mark's trade, as far as like the kind of sound that he brings to an album, tends to be very big and bright and natural sounding and loud and roomy. And these are all kind of like fluffy pseudo producer words. I don't really know if those mean anything, but
Yeah.
I've read enough Steve Albini things where he talks.
Punchy is a word that comes up a lot.
Yeah, punchy, warm, right? I'm sure that these are terms that would drive Mark insane, or any other producer worth their salt. But for me, as an amateur on the outside, it's just I listen to records and I'm just trying to translate how I feel when I listen to them. That's all I got. But Mark's just the sound he gets from bands like Cannibal Corpse, from bands like Black Dahlia Murder. It's just, that's what we wanted. We felt like the last two records that we had done, despite us, being very happy with how they came out sonically, were a little bit too claustrophobic and murky sounding for what we were trying to do moving forward. And what Mark has done in the past really was the kind of sound that we were looking for. We just wanted it to be bigger and brighter.
Yeah. In terms of the drum sound, you said that it took you 2 weeks to get the sound that you were looking for. What was that exactly? I mean, besides like roomy, was it more space on the, which is basically just a different way of saying roomy, but did you want to have like a bigger sound on the drums and something that wasn't as compressed?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted a bigger sound. We wanted a more natural sound. We wanted it to just be really live sounding and just kind of sound like how it sounds when Matt is playing the drums in front of you, and not just like he's playing the drums in a cave half a mile from you. And with us being the way that we are, we didn't really want to punch stuff in. We didn't want to use fake drums. We didn't want to do crazy triggers or anything like that. We just wanted the drums to be real. And we wanted the performance that you heard to be how Matt's drums sound when they're just mic'd up well. And that's what you got. And I mean, it's going to sound like I'm throwing Matt onto the bus here. I'm not. And Matt is a fantastic drummer. But the reason it took so long is because we just needed to get the right takes of everything. And a lot of that involved just playing these songs and then going back and doing them over and over and over and over again until we were sure that we had gotten the best possible take out of him for a specific song, and we can move on to the next one. And, when you're not patching a million things in and adding a shitload of compression to stuff, it just kind of requires more from the person who's performing on the instrument. And I think Matt delivered there.
Yeah. I mean, drummers in metal bands typically have a lot of pressure on them because the drums are usually the first thing that you put down, and it's not quite as easy to, I don't even know if it's possible to like overdub a single part in on a drum track like it is, re-recording a single riff or a solo.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And Mark Lewis handled everything from the engineering all the way to the mastering, right?
Yeah, he engineered it. We did pre-production with him. He mixed it and he mastered it. He did everything.
Yeah. Is that something that you guys look for? Do you want somebody who's able to handle the whole package?
I don't think if it's something that we specifically were looking for, but it just kind of it revealed itself to us very naturally. And then once it did, and we started working on it that way with Mark, it kind of made sense to all of us. Because, I think with our previous two albums, we, recorded it, or with Lesions at least, we recorded it one place, and then we had another person kind of mixing it, and then we had another person mastering it. And all three of those people are going to place their own stamp on what they think something should sound like. And it just was a lot easier once we realized that we could trust Mark and that he was going to do right by us, and he wasn't going to add bass drops and clean singing and stuff into our songs. That once we kind of learned that he was just along for the ride and he trusted our vision, so to speak, just to have him do everything. It really was just a question of trust. And I'm glad that he did that.
So at the time that we're having this conversation, Undeath recently completed the tour. Do you guys have anything planned for either the end of this year or for the beginning of 2025?
Yeah, we're playing a fest in Albany, New York on December 7th. I think we're kind of the only death metal band playing on that fest. It's like a 2-day fest that's put on by that band, the Acacia Strain. And they asked us to do it, and it's very close to home for us, so it was kind of a no-brainer. So we got that going on. And then that's it for 2024 for us. And then we've got some irons in the fire for next year. We just confirmed the tour for the spring in the US that should be announced relatively soon. I think it'll probably be announced in December or January. But that'll be a good one. Just a nice big fat metal tour. And then playing Bloodstock Fest in England in August. Going to do some other fests and shows around that, I'm sure. And then, yeah, just thinking about stuff for fall and winter next year already. So we're doing our best to stay busy.
What's your favorite song to play live?
Ooh, that's a good question. Typically, it's never the ones that people want to hear. Like people love Necrobionics, and I hate playing that song because it's really hard. And people always want to hear, songs off our first record, like Entranced by the Pendulum and Archfiend Coercion Methods. Just these extremely difficult songs that I don't think any of us really want to play. But favorite ones to play live, I love the title track off More Insane. I think that's an extremely fun one to play. I really enjoyed doing that on this last tour. I love playing Rise from the Grave. That's a fun one. And I love the song Bounty Hunter off More Insane. That's easy and fun. And what's another one? Enhancing the Dead. That's a really fun one to play as well. But the common thread here is that those songs are very easy. so those are the ones that I enjoy playing the most. I'm a pretty lazy person.
So More Insane is out now through Prosthetic Records. Alex, please tell everyone how they can order the album and what the best way to get it is.
Yeah, so if you go to undeathmetal.com, you'll find all sorts of links on there to places that you can buy the record, that you can buy merch, tour dates, etc. But yeah, you can get the record there. You can get the record on the Prosthetic Records website. You can get it over on the Undeath Bandcamp. But I'd say pretty much everything you need, including links to where to purchase the record, you can get on undeathmetal.com.
Now, is the colored LP that Prosthetic put out, is that still available?
Yeah. There was a rarer variant that was exclusive to Decibel magazine that I believe is gone, but there's still 2 color variants that are both still available from Prosthetic, and you can get those at all of those places that I just mentioned. You can get those from the label directly on their website. You can get it from our Bandcamp, or you can get it from our web store.
And I believe your drummer, Matt, created the artwork for this, right?
He sure did, yep.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, Matt...
It's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, it's crazy. Matt is a very strange guy. And I love him. Matt has done all of the art for our records. He did all of our demo covers. He did our 2 other records. And yeah, this is more just insane gruesomeness from him for this record. And yeah, pretty easy process. We just kind of told him to go nuts with it, and he came back with the sketches for what became the final cover, and we said, yep, looks good. Let's paint that big severed head. and that was it.
Very cool. And you mentioned your website. How else can people get updates on Undeath and the tours that you mentioned?
I mean, we're on all the social media out there. I think we probably post the most updates on Instagram and Twitter, I guess x.com. So stupid, but we're on both of those things the most often, I'd say, or at least updating them the most. So we're Undeath NY on Instagram, and I believe we're also Undeath NY on Twitter. But if you just punch Undeath into the search bar, you'll find us pretty quickly. Our avatar or our profile picture at the time of this recording is just the More Insane album cover, so it's pretty immediately identifiable. We're also on Facebook. We don't really use that too much these days. But yeah, anywhere that you typically go to get updates on bands via social media, you'll probably find us there.
Very cool. Alex, is there anything else you want to say?
I want to encourage everybody out there to continue to listen to good death metal. Keep supporting the bands that you like. Go see them on tour. Go buy merch at shows. It's hard out there right now for everybody. I think that stuff in this country is really bizarre and frustrating, and it's tough to be any kind of working artist at the moment. So whatever ways that people can show their support and appreciation for people that are dedicating themselves to the arts at the moment, it does not go unappreciated by those artists. And I'm certainly one of those people who appreciates each and every last ounce of support that Undeath gets, and I continue to just be blown away by the fact that anybody even remotely cares about our band. So I just want to thank everybody for listening, and yeah, just be safe out there.
Very cool. Thank you, Alex.
All right, thank you.